Are we about to witness a second subprime crisis? The truth is, we're probably on the brink of a housing crisis that we've not seen the like of since the 1930s, since the Great Depression. My name is Dr. Hugh Macartney. I'm an Associate Professor of Political Economy at the University of Birmingham. And I think it's worth recalling how dramatic and serious the financial crisis was. I say that because, I think we're at a stage, even going into the COVID pandemic, where it's almost like what happened in 2007, 2008 is long past us in the rearview mirror. We've been moving on, people have forgotten about the financial crisis, but the financial crisis, and in particular the subprime component of that, and the evictions that came with that, and the homelessness problem and crisis that came with that, were huge. And yet many economists are now saying that the problem that we're currently experiencing with the COVID pandemic means that it's quite likely that we're going to see approximately 4 times as many evictions now at the end of 2020 than we did during the global financial crisis of 2007-2008. 4 times as many evictions, 4 times the size of the homelessness problem as we witnessed in 2007-2008. That's a staggering toll. And I did a couple of videos back in April, May, June, talking about the longer term effects of COVID. And one of the things I drew attention to was the fact that round about September, this was going to be the real turning point. I don't know where you're watching this from in the world, but from where I sit in the UK, it still feels very much like a phony war. There's, mixed signals, mixed economic data, and we're sort of living in this state of stasis. Schools in the UK haven't opened again yet. We haven't yet quite seen the second wave beginning. And, I'm conscious that where you're living in the world, things might look very different. But from here, I stand by what I said before, that it looks like September really is going to be a turning point, because so many of the government guarantees here, and in particular now we're talking about the US, are coming to an end. August the 24th is one of those doomsdays, in a sense, for the US in relation to this housing crisis. But the figures that we're looking at in this instant are simply staggering. We're talking about, in the US alone, round about 30 to 40 million people based on current estimates. Of those living in rented accommodation, we're talking about between 29 to 43% of people living in rented accommodation who could be on the point of being evicted by the end of this year. And to put all of that in context, some of the statistics seem to suggest that about 48% of those households were already struggling before the COVID pandemic actually hit. And in closing, to take us back to the financial crisis, it's not simply, this was what was so staggering and so devastating with the financial crisis, was that this seemingly small proportion of the US housing market had this huge ripple knock-on effect for the US housing market, the US economy, and then the global economy. If we return to those figures, that we might be about to witness a housing crisis 4 times the size of the one we saw with the global financial crisis of 2007-2008, then this simply could be quite devastating for the US economy and in turn for the global economy. So in closing, it seems almost unbelievable that Congress in the US is not stepping in to provide better help and provision, financial provision for both US homeowners who are pressured, and in particularly those rental proportion of the population who are struggling at this stage.